All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. This is a panel I'm particularly excited about, not only because I think it's an important conversation to be had, but also in my relatively new role as director of the Institute of Armenian Studies, this is a question I've been asking myself. What is the purpose of academic institutions like the Institute? What is the purpose of the university enterprise in general? And are we doing a good enough job of communicating our value to the general public? So I have folks with really diverse range of expertise to help us understand the role of the university outside of the ivory tower. And this is a title I'm very proud of coming up with in partnership with ASOF. So what I'd like to do for the first portion of the panel is Tom, Kate, and Yannis, if you could each introduce your role on this campus and possibly off campus for some of you, and more importantly, explain how or if your particular role has a mandate to serve communities outside of the university. So Tom, let's start with you.
I've been in Children's Hospital Los Angeles, USC, as an ophthalmologist since 2006. Of those 18 years, 13 have been spent as division head of ophthalmology at Children's. I'd recently just stepped down after a long tour of duty. And, you know, in terms of like community and our role in the community, we know what our role is internally. We know what our role is at the hospital. We know what our role is at the university, the medical school. What makes, I think, our institution sort of very special is we also, obviously, as physicians, serve the community. And I think that from our standpoint, we have a motto: we love all children equally, independent of zip code. And that's relevant for this afternoon because it's also independent of country code, as you'll hear about later. So yeah, our mission is to support children no matter where they are, using as much technology as we can to scale that impact.
Thank you. Kate, if you could tell us, what is the public exchange?
Sure.
What is its mandate?
Sure. First of all, thank you for having us, Shushan, and it's an honor to be on a panel with Dean Yortsos and Dr. Lee. The public exchange launched here at USC in February of 2020, a really interesting time to launch anything. So we are just about 5 years old, and we have a pretty simple mission. It's to partner with public and private sector organizations to help our partners design solutions to, as we say, the problems that matter most. That's maybe another way of saying that is we are a social impact program. Social impact is our North Star. The public exchange model sort of has three legs of the stool. The first is partnership. As I said, everything we do is in partnership with an organization or organizations outside the university, and that's not least because none of us on my team of 15 are academics ourselves. We all come from government, industry, or nonprofit professional backgrounds. The second leg of that stool is academic expertise. So research and academic expertise is the lifeblood of our program. We spend our days trying to understand what our partners are struggling with, sort of the unknowns, the gaps in their knowledge. And then we go out across USC and increasingly across university lines to put together the very best team that can help deliver actionable insights that help our partners move forward in their work. And kind of the last leg of that stool is project management. So we have a really talented team of project managers. They work with our teams of researchers and our partners to make sure that the work is getting done on time and on budget, and critically that we're maximizing the impact of our work so that our partners can take action on it. A lot of our work sort of in the early years of our program has been focused on climate and sustainability and health and well-being, particularly public health. So we have worked with more than 25 partners on projects ranging from around water conservation, urban greening, renewable energy, food insecurity, homelessness prevention, and a lot more that I'm happy to talk about in our conversation today.
So just to clarify, the public exchange harnesses university expertise to solve real-world problems.
That's right.
Yannis, what about your role as Dean of the Viterbi School of Engineering?
Well, thank you for inviting me, and I'm very happy to be part of this panel. You are at this very brand new building that we built we inaugurated about a few months ago. It's dedicated to computer science. Engineering, I like to make the point that universities, since we're discussing this before, is an integral part of the world today and cannot be separated by the world and the things that are happening for a number of reasons. Because it addresses significant issues, particularly from the engineering side, that have tremendous impact on the world. And this impact continues day after day after day. When we look at what is that we try to do here at USC in the School of Engineering, is the first thing we ask is, what's our impact? And then based on that, we then build thought leadership, programs, and talent. So the 4 items that I look as a dean, is making sure that whatever impact we have is supported by the thought leadership that we develop, which then requires to have specific programs, and for this, obviously, we have to have the appropriate talent in order to be able to do that. So this is how we built our school, and we've been doing this for a while. Been the Dean of Engineering for the last 20 years, long time. Since this is an Armenian-friendly crowd, I should mention that I was actually recruited, I think Shushan knows about it, by Zorab Kaprilyan, who was at the time provost, dean, and department chair of electrical engineering. Our late professor Sol Golom used to say that at USC we believe in one man, one vote, and this is one man who has the one vote of the university. Zorab asked me, I had an interview with him for like two minutes. He said, you're from Caltech, right? I said, yes. And you're publishing, right? I said, yes. You're hired. That was the interview. This was not like the interviews we have today that they go through. Tons of interviews of people. What I find to close this loop, I find so gratifying is that the position that I have as Dean of Engineering also has the Kaprilyan Chair. So my title is the Kaprilyan Chair at the Dean of the School of Engineering. So actually this is a wonderful connection and closes the loop, honoring a person who actually was instrumental for making USC move across the years of formative years actually for the university in many ways.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
So in addition to your Zohrab Kaprilyan connection, both Tom and Kate also have very interesting Armenia or Armenian stories. Perhaps, Kate, we can start with you. What's your Armenia connection? And then, Tom, I'll come to you.
Sure. So I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Armenia from 2002 to 2004. I feel like I'm dating myself, but for those who don't know, the Peace Corps is an American government-funded volunteer program. It sends Americans to countries around the world to volunteer. So I moved to Armenia in June of 2002. I spent 3 months in the Dilijan area, Hagartsin Gyukh, if I'm saying that correctly.
You are.
Studying Armenian in the Hagartsin school. And then I was sent to Gyumri, and I lived in Gyumri for 2 years, where I worked on a US-funded earthquake recovery project. So I'm guessing everyone here knows, but Northwest Armenia, suffered a devastating earthquake in 1988. And when I arrived in 2002, there was still quite a bit of reconstruction left to do. So I worked part-time on that, and then I taught English, which I was wildly unqualified to do, except for being an English speaker. And because I was one of the only foreigners in Gyumri at the time, there's a Russian military base, but not many other foreigners, I was frequently stopped in the street and asked to go to people's houses and cafes and practice English. So I did a lot of that, and I was 22, and I found that really fun. So it was a great and really formative and powerful experience in my early adult life. Armenians really taught me what resilience looks like, and I've taken that with me throughout my life.
I'm curious, your late language training in Hagartsin, it must not have prepared you for the Gyumri dialect, which of course is a Western Armenian dialect.
No, but I got the humor, even though I didn't always understand.
Tom, what's your Armenian story?
My area of expertise is treating children who have a form of blindness called retinopathy of prematurity. And I was at a conference in 2009, our main academy conference in San Francisco, and a friend who's actually a retina surgeon in Vegas who referred me patients who's also Armenian, pulled me aside and said, hey, I want you to meet someone, and his name is Dr. Roger Ohanessian, who is the founder of the Armenian Eye Care Project. And he said that there was an epidemic of babies going blind because they had just started to build these neonatal intensive care units in Yerevan. And these children were now surviving, but now they were going blind from this new disease their doctors had never seen before because those children never survived. And he said that he wanted me to come over to Armenia and train their doctors on how to take care of this. And I was like, one, where's Armenia? and two, how about I give you my USB jump drive and I'll give you all the lectures and I'll tell you how to give the lectures and it'll be just like, and he would say, oh, you know, Tom, that's so great. We're so grateful. But if you could actually come to Armenia, and I was like, oh, I have something even better. They just came up with this thing called Zoom. It's like me giving the lecture in person. And he said, oh, that's really wonderful. You're so generous with your time. But if you could find a way to come to Armenia and teach us, that would be even better. And I realized that he wasn't giving up. So my fallback to all these questions would be, let me run this by my wife and get back to you. So what I learned very quickly is that I'm Korean, is that both Armenians and Koreans have found a very effective way to weaponize guilt. And so he made me feel so guilty as I was leaving the bar where he was trying to coerce me that I realized I couldn't live with myself because I had just given this lecture at the academy about the importance of doing this treatment. So in 2010, I flew to Yerevan, and we actually developed a program where, in addition to treating them the nuts and bolts through a workshop in person, 3 days, we would then supervise them remotely every week through telemedicine, where the Armenian Eye Care Project purchased a camera that then they used to image every premature infant in Yerevan for the next year. And over that time, 3 experts, myself included, would review those images remotely once a week as if those children were right here in Los Angeles. And by the end of the year, we got them to be as proficient as US experts in the national NIH studies. So we were really very grateful. And on the return flight home, I realized that if we pulled this off, we would have impacted the trajectory of an entire country. And I could pretty much retire at that point because I don't think I could beat that. But anyway, since then, we've iterated and expanded our educational training programs beyond just ophthalmology to really create a very diverse platform for pediatric healthcare workers in their training and education.
Wow, it's interesting. This is something we tell experts across disciplines, is Armenia is so small. It is such an interesting hub, an experimental hub for impact, because you can really see impact quite quickly and quite easily. Yannis, I wanted to ask if you would share how the collaboration between Viterbi and the Polytechnic University was born, and if there was a persistent diasporan, like in Tom's case, who may have facilitated.
We had this a couple of years ago, the support of Armenian, parts of the Armenian community, including Charlie Gallian, who I don't think he's here.
Who is the chairman of the Leadership Council of the Institute. The Institute has a body of philanthropists, community activists, experts who support our work, and he's the chairman.
He supported a program in which was a computer science sort of a literacy program that was done by USC Engineering, the engineering school, in partnership with the Polytechnic in Armenia. It's a wonderful program. A number of kids graduated from it. I was there in June 2023 when I visited Yerevan and Armenia for the first time, actually. But we also have a strong affiliation and partnership with the American University of Armenia, which, by the way, was founded by the founding president of the university was Mike Akbabian, who used to be a chair of civil engineering here at USC. Upon the establishment of the university, he became the founding president. Another very significant person in the USC Viterbi engineering history is sort of the right-hand man of Zora Koprilian, Jack Mnuchin. When I visited the American University of Armenia, the pictures of both Jack and Mike Akbabian and their family were there, and many others as well. So there is a very close connection in that respect, a very historical one. One of the things that we wanted to create, and we haven't done this yet, is we have at USC in engineering a program which we call iPodia. This is the idea that you can take the same class that is offered here at the same time with other universities worldwide. So many universities many students get together. They are students from different universities. They take the same class, the same professor, without money changing hands or anything like that. If you want to pay tuition here or pay tuition in let's say, American University of Armenia, and the students graduate by essentially collaborating across the world, and they have the same class. So we have been doing this for a while now with at least 15 or so universities in the world, and we'll very much like to include the American University of Armenia. We're very close to doing that, and then there was a little bit of a disturbance. Hopefully this will be over, and we can go through that.
But
So
Yannis, from your trip to Armenia last summer, and I was there for a part of it, so I saw that you visited so many universities, you visited TUMO, you visited cultural heritage sites, and so on. How do you assess the academic landscape in Armenia? Where do you see the most potential? What excites you the most?
Right. Of course I did, and there is tremendous talent for a small place like Armenia. It reminds me a little bit of, so I'm a native of Greece, so Greece has similarities in terms of strength, history, longevity, values. So many of these countries in that part of the world have a resilience and tenacity that you don't see very often. And one of the ways by which this is done is because people have significant values and believe in education. They believe in advancing humanity in many different ways. I have a slide here, if I may show, that shows you how I look at engineering and technology. And it is all about purpose. And the purpose is how do you make sure that you have an impact on society ultimately. And I look at engineering in 4 buckets. A big bucket is sustainability in general. Because sustainability is such a polarizing world nowadays, I use a different word for it. I call it sustained prosperity. In fact, the Greek word for sustainability, sorry to inject some Greek here, is aiphoria, which means forever green, which essentially means forever prosperous. And so I think that is the word that we should be using about sustainability rather than, one that connotes sort of a scarcity that sometimes people, take this part. Another big area is health, a big bucket. A third big bucket is security. By security, I mean cyberspace is becoming a very big part of security in many different ways. Electronics, you read the news. But the fourth one is how you enrich life. And all of this, those of you who are not engineering or STEM majors, you know the Maslow hierarchy, which is for individuals. I apply this as a Maslow hierarchy for humanity and for the planet. These things are going to be forever the issues that we're going to have as humans will be sustainable, secure, healthy, and then enriching life and have a self-actualization, if you wish. I think that every country has these challenges, and one can actually sort of focus these challenges for the individual country. I was in Egypt in early December to evaluate the American University of Cairo, and very similar question was asked there. And even though people in in higher education want to solve a problem that will give them a Nobel Prize, a lot of the impact is when you try to address issues and grand challenges that you have in your own neighborhood and in your own country. And this can be articulated, and then you have the talent to solve that. And I think that's something to start thinking about, because also it has a much bigger impact. And since I have one more slide, I need to show that. So if you go to the next slide. Slides. Okay, there you go.
There it is.
So here's my symbolic equation. You expect an equation from an engineer, except that it doesn't have any symbols. So look at this equation here. It has a triangle, which is the Maslow hierarchy, plus the tremendous ability of technology to solve problems, particularly through AI and other things. This is growing not only exponentially fast, but even faster than exponential. And this combination of the two gives rise to what I call a double helix. And this double helix is between technology and humanity. I think today we live in this double helix, which is happening faster and faster and tighter than ever before. Technology and how it interacts with humanity, we see this across the board in many, many different ways, and it has it's all its other sort of ramifications. And I think this is, when I look at what's going on in the world today, we are really playing along these lines, and how we as humans can deal with technology, and how technology can help us deal in a different way as well. So I think, for people who think that humanities are not important, I'm the highest proponent of humanities, because technology and humanity are intertwined as never before. And so I think that's something to hear. That's the end of my slides.
Thank you for making that point for me. Talking about solving real-world problems in your neighborhood, Kate, I wonder if you can give one concrete example of a project that the Public Exchange has worked on recently that will really demonstrate the social impact.
Sure. In the early days of the pandemic, LA County came to us and said, we know there are a lot of people, most populous county in the United States. We know that there are a lot of people who are becoming newly food insecure. As you may know, LA County already had a pretty challenging food insecurity situation. But the job losses from the pandemic and the changing hours of the food outlets and sort of a variety of factors was definitely increasing that number. But because of the way food insecurity is tracked in this country, LA County officials were relying on 2018 information to make decisions with tens of millions of federal dollars to provide aid. And so we put together a team in a matter of days that brought together public health experts, engineers, data scientists, and a sort of a whole range, spatial scientists, a whole range of other experts, food systems experts, who were able to help the county analyze and determine who was becoming newly food insecure, and that ultimately resulted in the county being able to deliver 1 million pounds of food assistance to people who needed it the most. So that's one example. I mean, we've worked on a lot of other things in sort of different realms. We're partnering, for example, right now with Tom and I were talking before the panel, with the self-storage industry on a homelessness prevention project, because we're partnering with the industry associations in California and in Arizona, because as you may or may not know, the self-storage industry is actually very much on the front lines of the homelessness crisis. Many people who are experiencing difficult life transitions are clients of the self-storage industry, and the employees of the facilities are often on the front line. Call them bartenders without a shot glass, because they are frequently interacting very directly with people who are in fairly dire life circumstances. So we put together a team of academics, a behavioral scientist, and a public health expert who are testing interventions in self-storage facilities to connect people who may be on a trajectory to becoming unhoused with resources that might interrupt that trajectory and help them from becoming unhoused. So those are two examples.
Wow. Kate, do you think the model for public exchange is scalable or replicable? Like, what does it have to offer to communities outside of USC or LA? How could a country like Armenia potentially benefit from such a model?
Yeah, so it was designed to be both replicable and scalable. Amber Miller, who was the former dean of the Dornsife College and astrophysicist, and who was our founder, who's now the president of the Hewlett Foundation, began thinking of this idea when she was the Dean of Sciences at Columbia. And really sort of her thought process was, why am I sitting in this institution with some of the most brilliant people on the planet, and I so rarely get calls from organizations outside or people outside the university asking for expertise? And that's really what, sort of the seeds of what became public exchange. And really one of the reasons that she landed on was there just isn't the infrastructure, scalable infrastructure inside the university that can pull together these teams and support them from the beginning of the project to the end of the project. And so, you know, Amber's ambition and then mine and our teams is very much to create a model that can be scaled across American academia. And I'm actually really excited that we're taking concrete steps to do that. We have partnered with Washington University in St. Louis, and they will be launching their own public exchange this fall. And so in doing so, we will become the public exchange network, which is really exciting. We're in conversations with several other big research universities about working with them to help them stand up public exchanges as well. These will be independent but affiliated programs that build programs kind of based on the individual needs of their institutions and communities and regions, but that can work together on projects of sort of common interest. Food insecurity would be a great example, right? Both St. Louis and LA have serious food insecurity challenges. So that's really exciting for us. Now, you know, we've really been focused on American academia. That's kind of what we know. But I've been so interested to see that when I'm at conferences or talking about the public exchange model, academics from Brazil, from India, South Africa have come up to me saying, well, it would be interesting for us to do something like this in our universities. And I guess my answer is, great, let's do it. I just, you know, I don't know how academia in other countries really differs from the way academia is structured and functions here in the US. But I think you know, it absolutely can start with a conversation, and that's like an open invitation. If anyone wants to have a conversation about how this model might be applied elsewhere, I'm all in.
Everyone take note. You're going to be bombarded with emails and calls. Tom, talking about scalability, I know that in addition to your work of flying out to Armenia, training physicians, you've also done a lot of work with some people here in the audience who've been involved on creating platforms for healthcare education. I wonder if you could speak a little bit about that with a focus on how important capacity building is.
There's a concept called the Lucas paradox. It's actually an economics observation by Robert Lucas, who is a former Nobel winner, and he made this observation that when you have countries that are wealthy and that have capital assets, they should be invested in poor countries because the cost of labor and cost of business is lower. And so your return on investment should be higher. The reason that doesn't happen is that you don't have the infrastructure to manage those assets. You don't have a banking system that's sophisticated, you don't have auditors, you don't have accounting. We realized in working with Armenia, there's a corollary to the Lucas paradox when it comes to expertise and knowledge. So if you consider those as assets, and USC, and it just will sort of touch upon your last question, which is going to be that what role does universities have? We're uniquely positioned to help emerging countries bridge and overcome that paradox, because what we find is when we go into a country, we can't just drop off a really sophisticated piece of equipment or a concept and expect them to be able to use it right away, because they don't have the infrastructure, the knowledge infrastructure, the educational infrastructure to take advantage of that. So over the past 15 years, we've been trying to address that by building capacity, by building infrastructure. So some examples. Aside from the telemedicine program that we started that got the whole ball rolling, we quickly realized that there were other disciplines that could benefit from the expertise we had here, but there was no way to deliver that educational content to Armenia efficiently. Even though we would create whole lectures and series in Armenian with Armenian, alphabet and language, getting it there was cumbersome. And so we actually developed an online platform to house all of this information. It's called Learn with Open. Zhenya Gazarian is the lead project manager for that. And that now has a platform. I think we have 2,000 registered users, 16,000 hits the past year for both parents and physicians and nurses. So the goal would be to try and create a platform that they could then carry on themselves. Another example was, how do we build capacity? We developed a patient-owned electronic medical record system in Armenian for the Armenian patients to carry with them, because they would usually come to the doctor's office with a Ziploc bag with all of their records there. And our first job was to try and find people to partner with in Armenia, and they didn't have any health informatics specialists. We realized that we had to actually create that for them. And so Armene Lulajan, who's here earlier, she developed the country's first health informatics fellowship that's now already graduated 10 students. And what that does is it prepares the country for this new digital future, of which they have no expertise in doing. And so one of the consistent themes from us is building capacity and infrastructure, allowing them to actually fast track all the assets that we have here, incorporate it into their system, but do it in a way where they have pipelines to deliver that. And so building infrastructure, overcoming the Lucas paradox when it comes to knowledge and expertise. And I think that's something that USC is uniquely positioned to deliver, because we have so much expertise here. It's almost like a public-private exchange where we need to create the communication pipeline to get it into the country. And oftentimes that means actually creating the freeways, the educational, the expertise freeways as a distribution system into the country, which currently doesn't have any mature version of that right now. And so right now the one that we're really focusing on is a national pediatric residency program, using a lot of these platforms to sort of crystallize a newer version of training for their country.
Thank you. I'm sure many of you in this audience belong to some kind of an organization with the following formula: Armenian, enter your disciplinary field, association, or something like that. Armenian American Healthcare Association, Armenian Bar Association, Armenian Professional Society, and so on. And from so many of these organizations, I hear stories of the will and the desire to do something for Armenia, with Armenia, parachuting in, dropping off goods, services, technology, and then the local folks not knowing what to do with it, or being in awe of said technology or said new good, but really not having the capacity to make the best use of it. But here I want to ask an important question, which is, what apprehensions or cautions should we be aware of when we are thinking about partnerships with entities off campus? And when it comes specifically to Armenia, this is a sensitive point for me. Anytime a student or an interested supporter walks into the institute, I always make the point that Armenia is not a charity case. We are not there to help Armenia. We are there to partner with Armenia, to engage with Armenia. So I wonder how each of you think about how careful we need to be about considering local bases of knowledge and also cultural sensitivity. What does it mean to engage? And Kate, I'm so happy you brought up the point of, well, we don't know how academia works in other countries, right? Because institutions, systems, cultural notions of propriety and so much differ from context to context. So I'd be curious, maybe Yannis, we can start with you. How does Viterbi view this element of respecting local knowledge and cultural nuances?
Yeah, sure. My view about engineering and science is that that's global. Right now, there is the concept that you can have science or engineering being part of a specific country and not be across the world is not valid. In fact, I would like very much to make reference to Noah Yuval Harari, a very well-known Israeli historian, who tries to understand the world today and tries to understand the fact that the dichotomy, if you wish, that I sort of tried to mention between technology and humanity, that technology and science is global. is across all borders. Humanity sometimes has difficulty understanding that concept because we want sometimes to be tribal in some sense, and being scientific, science does not allow you to be tribal because science is universal. And to some extent, we need to keep that in mind when we partner with any other institution or any other country. Now, there are cultural elements basically because of this interaction with humanity. Humans want to protect perhaps their own little thing, which is something that it is obviously to be respected and everything. But all our interactions we have here at USC with other parts of the world, whether it is in India or East Asia or other countries, I have not seen a situation in which we are not able to create lasting relationships that advance science and engineering. And I can mention, for example, a very specific program that we started back in 2008 called the Grand Challenges Scholars Program that was started with the National Academy of Engineering. And now this has spread across the world, more than 100 universities. Many universities across the world have actually accepted that. And this is how to solve big grand challenges of the world. And it is mostly an undergraduate program because it attracts a lot of undergraduate students. This program, by the way, received the Gordon Prize of the National Academy 3 years ago over here at USC, so we hosted them. Having respect for how people work in their societies and understanding, I think it's important. The overarching, however, common denominator is that we all work together in a scientific or technological issue that does not recognize boundaries, and there are no boundaries about it. The boundaries exist artificially, and we put them in a way, sometimes ill-conceived way, but if we believe that science should be open and therefore be published, and we have so many scientific journals about that, then we should be able to accept this and advance humanity in a bigger picture rather than simply being narrow and have a different view about that. That's my take.
Thank you. Kate, Tom, do you have something to add?
I guess I would just say that the work that I do, partnership building, is all about understanding incentives and aligning them. And we find that basically every successful long-term partnership we've built, we got that right, and then some where we didn't get it right. And so I think no matter where you are, that general principle applies. I will say, and maybe this is a slightly different take than Yannis, I lived in Armenia for 2 years, and I felt like I was maybe just beginning to understand it when I left. And so, if someone was to try to replicate a program like ours in Armenia or use it as a basis to build something, it would be very important, of course, that that person was Armenian, understood the society in which they lived, and the incentives that were kind of bringing different people together to collaborate. That's just essential for building good partnerships.
Tom?
I think one of the things that we sometimes have an urge to do is to solve or fix a problem.
Yes.
And I think sometimes you have to be very tempered in your approach. There's the risk that someone from another country comes into a country that's still evolving and then tell them what to do is not a good idea. It's always best if you're asked. If you're asked to come in and they're asking for help, that's great. To impose our standards, our thought processes when it's not asked for is going to be a problem. And so there's this phrase that I didn't really understand until I became division head, which is the road to hell is paved with the best intentions. And I think that's a risk that we run. So we want to be very sensitive as to who the incumbents are, because if you're being brought in to affect change, you need to have the right partner in country to do that, because there already is a solution. That solution has an equilibrium point for a reason, and to displace the equilibrium point somewhere to the right is not always easy, and there's going to be some politics involved, and you have to have the right partner to help guide you so you don't shoot yourself in the foot in trying to do something good.
And I know from my own personal experience, you finally understand the whole field of change management and organizational psychology and so on. Kate, you mentioned Amber Miller, our former dean at Dornsife, and I know I've had many conversations with her. She's brought this point up at her annual addresses about the struggle we have in academia, about our narrative, about explaining to those not in academia what the value is of academic work, what our story is, what our impact is. And again, at various scales, I've experienced this as a previous graduate student, as then a scholar, and now as institute director. Just on a personal note, for the last 2 years, I have been trying to come up with my elevator pitch when people ask me, what does the institute do? And I still don't think I have it. Because it's a constantly evolving process. And I'm curious, particularly in today's climate, like every day we're getting emails about funds being cut, about acceptances being rescinded. Graduate students who've been accepted to programs are getting a note saying because of funding cuts, we're rescinding your position, about postdocs being canceled, Fulbrights being paused. Everyone's in crisis, and there's a larger narrative that maybe academia wasn't worth it after all, a larger social narrative. So my question to you all is, how do we tell our story? How do you think about telling your story and explaining the value of the work that your respective institutions and fields offer? Yannis, maybe we can start with you.
Sure. I think that science and technology have reached a point in which people accept it as a given without paying attention to how we ended up being here. They don't understand that we all work on we are sitting on the shoulders of giants, and then the people that will come after us will also be sitting on the shoulders of other giants in order to be able to make that happen. That story has not been told. The story is now that technology and science, it's almost automatic. Things are happening automatically, and what took you so long kind of thing in order to develop it. They don't understand the process. We have failed to explain that. And when I look at, for example, the academies, the National Academy of Engineering, of Sciences, for a long time the question has been, how do you communicate the impact that you have? Sometimes I think it comes from a little bit of, I wouldn't say arrogance, but somehow it's a bit of like condescending, maybe a little bit. We're doing such a great thing. How come you don't recognize it? And somehow it is like you live there. The media also, I don't think they focus on the impact of science and technology, because the media themselves take it for granted that science and technology is going to be there to solve all the problems that you have. And again, it is like, what took you so long to do this? And unfortunately, they focus on some sort of a niche issues that are not university-wide. And somehow they say, well, look at the university that does this, and they ignore all the other major things that the university is doing. I think it's sort of, I won't say unfair, but it is not even the way by which, and of course, education is more expensive, and this is another thing that people feel that universities do not take significant steps in order to make a change there. There is no question in my mind that we have to do a much, much better job in articulating what we do. What we do is, in many ways, create the talent that is able to then come out and solve all these other important problems. At the same time, I must say that you have entrepreneurs who have taken full advantage of the talent that the society has produced to claim that what they did is because of their great genius. The truth is that you have so much underneath that created the ability to be able for these tremendous industries to be created as well. There's a little bit of that. Without making I don't want to name persons, but there is one of these very notable entrepreneurs asking students, instead of going to the university, they will give them $100,000 to not go to a university. And I don't understand what purpose that serves, Because if you don't go to university, you're not going to learn all these things in order to be able to do that. Now, conversely, we're living in a place in which technology, because it's so automatic, you talk about ChatGPT, you talk about, all the artificial intelligence ability to synthesize science in many different ways. I think we're going to have to address that issue in a very significant way, because people will ask the question, why don't I use simply a ChatGPT and I need to go to a university in order to be able to learn something? ChatGPT, by the way, is extraordinary today if you take a look at it, all the corresponding AIs and I must say also that ChatGPT, the key paper for ChatGPT was developed by two USC computer scientists. You know that. So whether you want to blame it or extol it, there are two, there's a USC component here.
Thank you. Kate?
Yeah, well, I think Dean Yortsos made a lot of astute points. I guess, something that's not a surprise to any of us is the compact between the American government and American academia is really fraying in real time. And because we have a democratically elected government, that really means the compact between the American people and academia is fraying. And I think Dean Yortsos is right that I consider myself maybe optimistically a reasonably educated person, but before I stepped into this role, I really had no idea how much of the work done inside American academia impacted my daily life. I mean, from my phone to sort of a whole range of other things comes out of academia. And I think as an industry, if we call ourselves that, we don't do a good job at telling that story. And I think we really have to combine forces to tell that story in a powerful way. But I don't think that alone is enough. The problem that Amber Miller, our founder, was really interested in solving was, what we just talked about is maybe more on the technology transfer side, but so many experts sit inside academia, from social scientists to behavioral scientists, architects, business experts, and many, many more, public health experts. How do we create an expertise transfer model that really leverages all of their vast talent and ability and makes it accessible to solve problems like those that we are working on? And that was really the idea behind public exchange. I mean, research universities sit, I believe, in every state in the country. They employ, I looked it up the other day, I think R1 research universities in the United States employ 139,000 faculty across the country. I mean, the breadth and depth of expertise that lives inside these walls is totally unparalleled in our society. But I think Americans have to see and feel that expertise in their everyday lives. That's totally essential, I think, for academia's survival at this point. And just to give you an example, something very simple that we just launched a new project called the Clean Project. It's a collaboration with our Earth Sciences department. And our earth scientists basically wanted to stand up a program where they would accept soil samples from the public here in LA for those who are affected by the wildfires, because there's a lot of concerns about toxins in the soil. The government is not testing. And so now if you're an LA County resident and you want to mail in soil from your kid's playground or your home, you can do that. There's drop-off locations throughout the city, and your USC Earth scientists will test that for you for free. We helped them sort of put together the infrastructure for that program. We're in conversations with school districts about standing up a school-based component. These kinds of projects, I think, have a transformative impact if they are done sort of at scale in communities all across the United States, and how our society thinks about our contributions.
Thank you. Tom?
I think there's definitely a big divide between our society as a whole and what you had talked about in terms of what we're actually doing, and a lot of things are being taken for granted. And I think in terms of communication, there's nothing more impactful than actually seeing it in front of you. I'll tell you that when we talk about what we're doing in Armenia, I'll actually talk to patients about it, and they'll be amazed, especially my Armenian patients. But I think that intersection, like there's a membrane that separates academia and real-world society, and that membrane, there are locations where you can just punch through a little bit, and then this miracle happens. And I think that's what we should, as academia, should not underestimate the impact that happens when we insert ourselves, and this goes back to what you were talking about, into our community. So I think it's more on us to figure out how to make more direct interactions with our community, whether it's through soil samples, whether it's through what we're doing with telemedicine, in Armenia. I think those are really hard to ignore. And it takes on its own PR on its own if it's important. And so I think that's where we have to sort of spend a little bit more time, is figuring out how can we be relevant, like you've talked about, to our communities today. And it's going to vary from discipline to discipline. I do think USC's really has a wealth of opportunities for that. We just have to make sure that we're communicating it, but also being intentional about identifying those opportunities to insert ourselves in the community.
Thank you so much. Thank you, all of you, for the work you're doing. Thank you for taking part in this panel. Dean Yannis, a special thanks for co-sponsoring this event and for granting us access to this amazing space. And thank you all for being here.